In the quiet foothills outside Albuquerque, a man who spent decades inside the most secretive corners of the U.S. military vanished without a trace. No phone, no glasses, no smartwatch, just an empty house and a timeline that stops cold in the middle of an ordinary morning. At first, it looked like another missing person case, but the deeper investigators looked, the stranger it became. This wasn't just anyone. This was a retired Air Force Major General who once oversaw advanced military research tied to the same base, long rumored to hold secrets about UFOs. And as bizarre theories exploded online, one unsettling question began hanging over the entire investigation. What really happened to him? The story begins on what should have been an ordinary morning in the foothills of Albuquerque, New Mexico. The Sandia Mountains stretch across the horizon there, rugged, quiet, and beautiful. It's the kind of place where people move for peace, for the views, and for easy access to nature. On February 27th, everything seemed perfectly normal in a quiet neighborhood on Quail Run Court. But within just a couple of hours, something happened that would launch a massive search operation and spark theories ranging from tragic accident to national security mystery. According to investigators from the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office, the timeline of that morning is unusually precise. At around 10 a.m., a repairman arrived at the home for a scheduled job. While he was there, he briefly interacted with the homeowner, a 68-year-old retired Air Force Major General named William Neil McCaslin. That interaction is now believed to be the last confirmed sighting of him. Roughly an hour later, at about 11:10 a.m., McCaslin's wife left the house for a medical appointment. Nothing appeared unusual at that moment. There were no signs of distress, no indication that anything was wrong. But when she returned shortly before 12:04 p.m., the house was empty. Her husband was gone. At first glance, it may not sound alarming. Friends describe McCaslin as someone who loved being outdoors. He was known to hike, ski, and bike regularly. The terrain surrounding the neighborhood is filled with trails and open spaces, so it would not have been strange for him to step outside for a quick walk or hike. But investigators quickly noticed something that made the situation far more puzzling. McCaslin had left behind nearly everything a person would normally take with them. His phone was still sitting on the counter. His prescription glasses were still inside the house. Even his wearable devices, including his Apple Watch, had been left behind. In 2026, most people don't leave the house without those things, especially not someone heading into the mountains. By around 3 p.m. that same afternoon, his wife reported him missing. Authorities quickly issued what is known as a silver alert, which is typically used for missing older adults who may be vulnerable or experiencing medical issues. Early reports suggested the possibility of a health condition, leading many people to speculate about dementia or memory problems. But that assumption would soon be challenged. Because William Neil McCaslin was not just any retired resident enjoying quiet mountain views, his career history placed him in some of the most sensitive areas of the United States military. According to his official Air Force biography, McCaslin spent more than 34 years working in advanced aerospace engineering and military technology programs. During that time, he held leadership roles connected to space acquisition programs, the Pentagon, and even the National Reconnaissance Office, the organization responsible for America's spy satellites. Eventually, he rose to command the Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. That lab oversaw billions of dollars in scientific and technological development for the military. And that location is where things start to get strange. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has long been associated with one of the most famous UFO conspiracies in American history. For decades, theorists have claimed that wreckage from the 1947 Roswell incident was secretly transported there for analysis. While the U.S. government has never confirmed those claims, the base did play a major role in Project Blue Book, a 17-year government investigation into thousands of reported UFO sightings. So when news spread that a former commander of that same research laboratory had suddenly disappeared, it didn't take long for the internet to explode with speculation. But investigators on the ground weren't focused on theories. They were focused on finding a missing man. Search efforts began almost immediately. Deputies started canvassing the neighborhood, going door to door across more than 700 homes, asking residents for security camera footage. Investigators specifically requested Ring camera videos and any surveillance recordings from the morning hours when McCaslin vanished. At the same time, large-scale search operations expanded into the surrounding terrain. Drones were launched over the foothills. Helicopters scanned the mountains from above. Search and rescue teams combed through trails and open spaces on foot. Canine units tracked potential scent trails, while volunteers on horseback joined the effort across rugged areas that vehicles could not reach. Day after day, teams searched miles of wilderness surrounding the neighborhood, but they found nothing. No clear footprints, no confirmed sightings, no video footage showing him leaving the area. It was as if he had simply vanished. Then, more than a week later, investigators finally discovered something that could potentially be connected to the case. On March 7th, search teams located a gray U.S. Air Force sweatshirt roughly 1.25 miles east of McCaslin's home. The item was carefully collected and sent for analysis. Initial tests showed no visible blood, but authorities continued processing the clothing for further evidence. There was just one problem. Even McCaslin's family could not confirm whether the sweatshirt actually belonged to him. Still, the discovery was enough to refocus search efforts in that area. Teams returned to the foothills, scanning nearby trails and open spaces again, hoping the clue might lead them closer to answers. Around the same time, investigators released a new photograph of McCaslin, taken shortly before his disappearance. The image showed him wearing a button-up shirt, the same clothing authorities now believe he may have been wearing when he left the house. And as investigators pieced together more details, several additional items were discovered to be missing from the home. His hiking boots were gone, his wallet was missing, and so was a .38 caliber revolver, along with its leather holster. At that point, the investigation expanded beyond local authorities. The FBI joined the search. The Air Force Office of Special Investigations became involved. State search and rescue teams were deployed. Multiple agencies were now working the case. Yet despite all the resources, the search teams, and the growing national attention, one thing remained unchanged. There was still no confirmed sign of William Neil McCaslin. As the days passed with no confirmed sightings, the mystery surrounding William Neil McCaslin only deepened. Investigators had a timeline, a last known interaction, and an expanding search area. Yet there was still no clear direction of travel. In a world filled with cameras, smartphones, and digital footprints, it was baffling that a man could simply walk out of his home and disappear without leaving a trace. Authorities began examining every possibility. One of the first questions investigators had to consider was whether McCaslin had left voluntarily. According to search experts, it's not uncommon for missing persons to leave their phones or tracking devices behind if they want to avoid being located. In many cases, people experiencing personal crises deliberately separate themselves from anything that could reveal their location, and that detail stood out in this case. McCaslin didn't just forget his phone or watch, he left behind multiple devices that could have easily been tracked. To investigators, that raised an important possibility. He may have intentionally walked away without them. But if that were the case, the next question became even more troubling. Where did he go? Search specialists explained that the key to solving cases like this often lies in identifying the last confirmed location and determining how far a person could realistically travel from that point. For the average person, search teams typically focus on a radius of about 2 miles, but McCaslin wasn't the average person. Friends described him as extremely active and comfortable navigating rough terrain. As an experienced hiker and outdoorsman, he could have easily traveled far beyond the normal search radius, possibly covering several miles through the foothills and canyon trails surrounding the neighborhood. That possibility forced investigators to widen their search parameters. Meanwhile, the online world began spinning its own theories. Because when people learned that a retired Air Force general with ties to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base had vanished, speculation exploded across social media. Some claimed the disappearance was connected to classified military programs. Others suggested a foreign intelligence operation targeting someone with valuable knowledge. And of course, the most sensational theory quickly spread across the internet: the idea that his past connections to UFO discussions somehow played a role. That theory gained traction after old leaked emails surfaced, showing McCaslin's name appearing in conversations between political advisor John Podesta and Tom DeLonge, the former Blink-182 guitarist, who later became heavily involved in UFO research and disclosure efforts. In one email, DeLonge mentioned working with McCaslin on discussions related to military technology and UFO-related topics. For conspiracy communities, that single reference was enough to ignite endless speculation. But McCaslin's wife stepped forward to address the rumors directly. In a public message, she confirmed that her husband had briefly interacted with members of the UFO community after retiring from the Air Force. However, she made it clear that his involvement was extremely limited. According to her, he had simply provided occasional technical advice for a fictional project and had no special knowledge about extraterrestrial materials or secret alien programs. She also pointed out something important that many people online were ignoring. McCaslin had retired from the Air Force more than a decade earlier. Any sensitive information he once handled would likely be outdated by now. Her message carried a clear purpose: shut down the noise and refocus attention on the real issue. A husband, a father, and a respected veteran was missing. Investigators continue working the case with multiple agencies involved, scanning the terrain, analyzing evidence, and following every potential lead. Whether the explanation turns out to be a tragic accident, a personal decision, or something far more complicated, the goal remains the same: finding answers and bringing closure to the family. For now, the disappearance of William Neil McCaslin remains one of the most puzzling missing person cases in recent memory. But cases like this are often solved when the smallest piece of information surfaces: a camera clip, a memory, or a witness who suddenly realizes they saw something important. So if this story caught your attention, make sure to like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dive investigations just like this one. And I want to hear your thoughts as well. Do you think this disappearance points toward a tragic accident in the wilderness? Or is there something much bigger hiding beneath the surface of this case? Let me know what you think in the comments.